You look at the news, and the economists, they're popping champagne. They tell you GDP is soaring, unemployment is at record lows, and the soft landing was a total success. Then you look at your bank account, and you feel like the Titanic already hit the iceberg. Welcome to 2025. We are living through one of the strangest economic paradoxes in modern history. Wall Street is throwing a party, but Main Street is panicking. They have a name for it now. They call it a Vibecession. It's when the spreadsheets say everything is booming, but your wallet is screaming that you're going bust. Right now, experts are literally flipping a coin, a 50-50 split on whether the US economy will officially collapse in 2025. But here's the secret they aren't telling you. It doesn't matter what the government calls it. If you feel trapped, if you can't pay your bills, you are already in your own personal recession. So in this series, we're not just looking at charts. We are building a survival map. We're going to break down exactly why you feel broke, the hidden risks that could explode into a brutal hard landing, and how to position your money, both defensively and offensively, for whatever comes next. Let's dive in. So, let's look at the battlefield. The economic signals right now aren't just mixed, they're completely schizophrenic. On paper, the United States looks like a bodybuilder. GDP is technically growing. The S&P 500 is hitting new highs. Honestly, if you were an alien just looking at government data, you'd think we were all living in a golden age. But then, you look at the Consumer Sentiment Index. This is basically a measure of how you feel about your money, and it has crashed to levels we only see during brutal, catastrophic events, like the 2008 crash or the 1970 stagflation. So why? Why is there such a massive, painful disconnect? This is the Vibecession. It happens when the big macro data is healthy, but the actual lived experience of the average person is getting harder and harder. And the main culprit is the inflation hangover. See, the news celebrates when inflation drops from 9% down to 3%. They shout, inflation is down. But what you hear is prices are going down, and that is just wrong.
Disinflation just means prices are rising slower. It doesn't mean your rent, your insurance, or your groceries are going back to 2019 prices. Those high prices are now permanent scar tissue on your wallet. So think about this. The data says your wages went up 4%. Fantastic. But the cumulative cost of living over the last 3 years went up almost 20%. You are, mathematically, poorer today than you were 3 years ago, even if you got a raise. And on top of that, this is an asset-rich, cash-poor economy. If you owned a house or stocks before 2020, your net worth looks great on paper. That drives the GDP up, but you can't buy groceries with your house's Zillow estimate, right? For millions of people, there are no assets to cushion the blow. There is only the price of coffee hitting $7 and rent taking 50% of your paycheck. The vibe is bad because the social contract feels broken. You're working harder, the economy is supposedly growing, but your actual quality of life is shrinking. But here's the scary part. A Vibecession is usually a precursor. It's the smoke before the fire. Because when people feel poor, they eventually stop spending. And when they stop spending, the real crash begins. So, are we looking at a soft landing, where things just stabilize? Or are we staring down the barrel of a hard landing, a total system shock? To understand that, we have to look at the ticking time bomb in the one place they keep telling us is strong, the labor market. The mainstream media, they love the term soft landing. It's this fantasy scenario where the Federal Reserve raises interest rates just enough to kill inflation, but not enough to kill the economy. It sounds nice, it sounds safe, but history tells us the Fed has about as much precision as a surgeon using a chainsaw. They almost always over-tighten, they break something, and they trigger a hard landing. And the cracks in the foundation are already showing. You see the headline, unemployment is low, but look closer. We are seeing a massive shift from full-time careers to part-time, gig economy survival jobs. Think about it. If an engineer gets laid off and starts driving for Uber just to eat, the official unemployment rate doesn't change one bit, but the economy has just lost a brutal amount of spending power.
This is what we call hidden unemployment. We are in a white-collar recession. The six-figure email job sector is bleeding out. And when high earners stop spending, the rest of the service economy is next to collapse. But if wages are stuck and good jobs are disappearing, how is the GDP still positive? How are people still buying things? Simple. Here's the secret. They aren't buying them with money. They're buying them with debt. US credit card debt has shattered all-time records, crossing over $1 trillion. But the really scary number isn't the total amount, it's the delinquency rate. More and more Americans are missing their car payments and their credit card payments. And this doesn't even include the ghost debt from buy now, pay later services. Millions are financing their groceries and sneakers in 4 easy payments. When you have to finance a sandwich, that is not a strong economy. That is a solvency crisis waiting to explode. The American consumer is the engine of the entire global economy. And right now, that engine is running on fumes and borrowed time. And finally, we have to talk about the one thing the Fed has zero control over: geopolitics. Let's be honest, the world is tense. Conflicts in key energy regions aren't just political tragedies, they are an economic tax on your wallet. Energy is the master variable. If oil prices spike, it's an immediate tax on every single thing you buy. Transportation costs go up, food costs go up, everything goes up. This puts the Fed in an impossible nightmare scenario. If the economy slows down, they should cut interest rates to help you. But if oil spikes, inflation comes roaring back. And if inflation comes back, they can't cut rates. They become trapped. This is the stagflation trap. High inflation, low growth, and high unemployment. It is the absolute worst-case scenario for your portfolio and for your wealth. So the storm clouds are gathering. The vibe is bad, the debt is high, and the world is unstable. Sitting around and hoping for a soft landing is not a strategy. Hope is not a hedge. You need a shield, and you need it now. Welcome to Defense. Rule number 1, cash is king again. But most of you are treating the king like a peasant. For a decade, holding cash was a terrible idea. Interest rates were zero, so your money just sat there being eaten alive by inflation. But now, in this high-interest environment, cash is a legitimate asset, if you stop letting your big bank rip you off.
If your emergency fund is sitting in a checking account earning 0.01%, you are voluntarily losing purchasing power every single day. You need to move that cash into a high-yield savings account, a money market fund, or short-term treasury bills. Your first defensive move is liquidity. In a hard landing, credit freezes. If you lose your job, those 25% interest credit cards will absolutely destroy you. You need 6 months of living expenses in liquid cash, earning at least 4 or 5%. This is your sleep-at-night money. It's your freedom. But be careful. Cash has a hidden enemy. If inflation spikes again to 6% and your savings account only pays 5%, you're still losing. Cash is for safety and survival, not for building wealth. Rule number 2 of defense: stop betting the entire farm on the United States. It's called home country bias. We just assume the S&P 500 will always outperform everything else because, well, it has for the last 15 years. But history shows that winners rotate. If the US enters a stagflationary recession, the US dollar could weaken significantly. And if the dollar drops, your global purchasing power drops with it. True defense means owning assets that don't care about the US Federal Reserve. This means looking at international ETFs, especially in emerging markets. It also means owning real assets: gold, silver, commodities. These are the historic hedges against currency debasement. When paper money starts to feel fake, investors run to things they can touch. A 5 to 10% allocation here isn't really an investment, it's insurance. Think of your defensive strategy like a barbell. On one side, you have all your ultra-safe assets: cash, treasuries, gold. This is what ensures you survive the crash. But if you only play defense, you miss the opportunity of a lifetime. Recessions are transfer events. Wealth isn't destroyed, it's transferred from the impatient to the patient. Defense keeps you in the game, but offense is how you win. Welcome to offense. This is where the rich get richer. While the average person is panic selling their assets to pay bills, the wealthy are buying those same assets for pennies on the dollar. Baron Rothschild famously said, "The time to buy is when there's blood in the streets, even if the blood is your own."
In a recession, people and companies are forced to sell good assets because they need cash now. This creates distressed assets. And you don't need to be a billionaire to play this game. You just need that dry powder, that cash pile we built in our defensive plan. When the S&P 500 drops 30%, that is not a crisis. That is a discount. That is Black Friday for your future financial freedom. But you don't just throw darts at a board. If the economy tanks, you want to own the companies that people absolutely cannot quit. First, healthcare. People might skip a vacation, but they will not skip their heart medication. This sector makes money whether the GDP is up or down.
Second, consumer staples. Think of the Walmart effect. In a recession, people downgrade from luxury brands to essentials. Companies that sell toilet paper, cheap food, and toothpaste actually see their sales increase when times are tough. And third, the modern defensive play, cybersecurity. In 2025, data is more valuable than oil. A company can fire 20% of its workforce, but they cannot turn off their firewall. Hackers don't take a day off just because there's a recession. Cybersecurity is the new utility stock. Now, a brutal warning. The biggest mistake investors make is trying to time the perfect bottom. You will not catch the bottom. Don't even try. By the time the news headlines finally say the economy is recovering, the market has already rallied 20% or more. The stock market looks forward, the news looks backward. The strategy is dollar cost averaging into the pain. When everyone is screaming that the world is ending, you buy a little bit more. You buy the fear. So here's the summary of our map. 2025 might bring a soft landing, or it might bring a brutal crash. The Vibecession might get worse before it gets better. But look, the macroeconomy is out of your control. You cannot fix the national debt. You cannot control the Federal Reserve. All you can control is your economy. Build your liquidity shield, diversify your assets, and keep your powder dry so you can attack when the market panics. Don't let the Vibecession paralyze you. Use the fear as a signal. Because while history doesn't repeat, it often rhymes, and those who know the lyrics get paid. I'll be here tracking every signal for you, right here on the Fiscal Axiom. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next update. Class dismissed.